Hey, what's up, guys? It's Aaron J. Daigle here to talk about the one thing that stops us from doing everything. Now, I'm not talking about your mother-in-law, your ex, your spouse, your boss, God, or even the devil. What I am talking about has nothing to do with any of that and has everything to do with timing. So on a more serious note, it's not the current ministry we're in, our income, where we live, who we are, where we were born, or what has happened to us up until this point in life. Instead, it's about the perfect timing for when we need to move forward and actually do the things that God is leading us to do. And speaking of timing, I couldn't help but notice it's about time to make my grandpa super happy. And the best way to do that is to do to the like button on this video what my grandpa does whenever he gets happy. And no, that's not actually my grandpa, but I do appreciate the like because it helps out so much with the YouTube algorithm. So let's get into this now and talk about the one thing that if we overcome will help us overcome thousands of other issues that we face in life. And it has to do with finding the right time. This hit me super hard when I read it in Ecclesiastes 11:4, which says that farmers who wait for perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest. In other words, the ideal time to move forward in life is never perfect. The farmer who sees the clouds and says, oh, it's going to rain, will never go out there and plant the seed. And by not planting the seed, he will never reap a harvest. The reason we're not as far along on our job or in our financial goals, in our marriage or in our physical fitness has nothing to do with all of the objections that we've continually convinced ourselves with. And it has everything to do with the fact that we're looking at these objections, analyzing them, and allowing them to stop us, waiting for the perfect moment for these things to simply disappear without failing to realize that they will always be there. So just like that farmer who watches the weather and never plants, down the road there's another man with a farm who sees the weather but plants anyways. And it's the second farmer who ends up with a crop. Likewise in our lives, we sit around and wait for the perfect timing to go out and build up a small group, or to go to our pastor and say, you know what, I really want to fulfill this ministry in the church. What can I do to get started? We let days and weeks and months go by because pastor hasn't asked me to, or because I want to finish college first, or because of this, or because of that, and there's always a reason why. But then what happens is somebody else with that same passion will come along, and in spite of not being asked by the pastor or not having finished college or whatever else is going on in their lives, they take the initiative and they make it happen. They're that farmer who doesn't really watch every cloud, and instead of figuring out why it can't be done, simply take the initiative and make it happen. And look, I threw out the pastor asking us and college as simply examples, but there are hundreds of excuses we give ourselves as to why things won't work out. My boss is against me. I'm limited in my income. I'll never be able to be used this way by God. She would never say yes to a date with me. I could never finish this particular class to get this certification. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. I'm too ugly. I mean, in my situation, I'm too muscular and too handsome. I get it. But we have allowed these objections to dictate our lifestyle instead of what God has promised us and told us He wants to do through us. So what am I saying with all this? To completely ignore timing? Well, yes and no. It depends how you want to look at it. Let's say it like this. I'm proposing that we do wait for the perfect moment. And I'm also proposing that the perfect moment is not when all these objections get cleared up. It's not when this changes or that happens. The perfect moment is now. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment, let's take this moment and make it perfect. So when should you get baptized? Now. When should you plug into church? Now. When should you start going to a small group? Now. When should you go out and start teaching others about baptism? Now. When should you get involved and start helping out at your church? Now. When should you lead a small group? Now. Not when the kids are grown, not when the money's in the bank, not after this weekend, not whenever this happens or that happens. Do it now, because this one thing has been stopping you from doing 10 other things. Look at your list of goals. Look at it inside of your heart or written down what it is that you have wanted to accomplish. Why have you not done it? It's because the perfect moment hasn't arrived. It's because 15 years ago you said, as soon as I get this taken care of in 2 weeks, I'm going to be on this thing. And then 2 weeks passed and something else came up. Well, guess what? Now 15 years down the road, you're holding off, waiting for one or two other little things. And when they're finished, 1 or 2 or 3 or 500 other things are going to pop up, and you're never going to have the perfect moment until you take the moment in front of you and make it perfect for what it is God called you to do, for what it is that you've been seeking to accomplish. It is the one reason why you haven't gotten into it and seen the fruit from it, because you haven't done it. That's what the Bible said. The farmer did not reap because he did not sow, because he kept making excuses. Don't be that farmer waiting around for this perfect moment that's never going to come, by the way. Take today and make it the perfect moment. Today matters, today counts, and now is the time of opportunity. Now we can take this even deeper by understanding Psalm 90:12, which says, "Teach us to realize the brevity of life, so that we may grow in wisdom." Now let's break this down and get some value from it. The Bible basically teaches that wisdom is two different things. It's knowing God, and it is the insight to know what is the best course of action in practical affairs of life. In other words, this psalm is telling us that by realizing time is short, the perfect timing will never come, and now is the moment in which we have to live. It then helps us to know God better and to live a life in such a way that will be the best course of action to go about completing the task that are set before us. Now, how does that apply to overcoming this one thing that's been holding us back? Well, because we make the mistake of assuming that time is endless. Yeah, of course, we know we're going to die one day, but we don't live like we're going to die one day. We put off until tomorrow what could be done today. We wait until next weekend when it could be done this weekend, assuming that we'll be here tomorrow or next weekend, or even worse, that we'll be here next decade. And so we hold off on the dreams that God gave us, on the promises that he told us he would do in our lives, without stopping to realize that other thing we're doing today could be the very last thing we ever do. Now, we could go hide under a blanket and pretend that one day all this opportunity is just going to fall in our lap and it's just going to pan out on itself. Our angels are going to show up and do all the work for us. But until we grab the now and execute what God put into our hearts, it may never ever happen. Now, I'm not telling us to go out and force things, but if God is directing you into something, there's no reason for you to hold yourself back by a limited perspective. Let me share a story with you about what I mean. For 17 years, I wanted to go and minister in Cuba. It is one of the many countries I have a burden for, pray for. I love the Cuban people and have always wanted to go and preach in that nation. Now, I felt like God put Cuba in my heart and that I would go there one day, but I didn't know how and I didn't know when. And I didn't step out to get ahead of God and try to force a door open that he wasn't trying to open in his timing. But one day I was sitting in the library and all of a sudden God dropped it in my heart and said, "Now, reach out to pastors in Cuba, to churches in Cuba, and start connecting with people." And within the hour, I made a connection with someone who connected me with someone else, who connected me with the next person. And before you know it, I was talking with some of the most influential church leaders across the nation. We made plans, everything worked out. We flew to Cuba, traveled around, preached, met wonderful people, and have friends in that country to this day. Now, here's why I'm sharing this story with you. If I had done that 16 years after I started wanting to go to Cuba, or the first year, or any time during that time frame before God told me now is the time, do this, it wouldn't have worked. So I'm not suggesting that we go off on our own, get ahead of God, and try to make things happen that he's not told us to make happen. On the flip side, understand that I didn't just sit back once God told me go and say, well, you got this though, God. Well, you got that. As if God wasn't aware of all the objections I could have presented. I didn't even think about it. I simply said, okay, let's do it. And I moved forward and made it happen. You cannot be so bold as to run ahead of God, but you cannot be so timid as to fall pace behind him. So if God says wait, wait. But if he says go, quit waiting. But waiting for the perfect moment will leave your ministry buried inside of you. The reason is because the perfect moment only comes twice. The first time it comes is when pigs start flying. And the second time is when we wake up and realize when the perfect moment actually is. Perfect timing is now. So if we have to have perfect, the only way we're going to get that is by doing it right now. Otherwise, next year, we're going to regret now the way right now we are regretting last year. This is what the Chinese mean when they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So maybe you've been like that farmer watching the clouds. Maybe you've come up with 100 reasons why it can't happen. And actually, you probably didn't. You actually came up with 2 or 3 good reasons. But it only takes one to hold you back. So if you've been staring at that objection and have held yourself back, you've probably been asking yourself, man, but what if it doesn't work? What if I try and it doesn't work? And I want to end this video with a better question. What if it does? And I thank you for watching. I pray I've added so much value to you and have helped you to go out and do what God called you to do. If you'd like to help the channel and like the video if you haven't done so already, it goes such a long way. And if you want to stay connected, go ahead and subscribe. Turn on the notifications bell so you stay updated with all the videos I post each week. And look, if you'd like a few more resources from me, I'll link my books in the description. You can check them out, see what's available, and grab whatever ones you're interested in. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.